My name is Dr. Ben. Welcome to my channel. Today, we are going to discuss the role of government in economic systems. Let's get started. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the purpose of an economic system, discuss the fundamentals of capitalism, describe mixed economies, describe the goals of socialism, discuss the elements of communism. Let's listen in to the students' conversations as they discuss their economics project for this semester.
Let's focus on our economics project. Any ideas?
Hey, I have a great idea. Picture this wonderful idea. Hello, I am Alan. Listen closely. I'm going to take you on a brief presentation of the fundamentals of economics. Think about this. A country's resources, just like many of our own, are limited. There simply isn't enough of everything for everyone to have all they desire. That's where economics comes in. Economics is the study of how individuals and nations make choices about using limited resources to meet their needs and wants. In many societies, governments play a role in guiding the economy. Some political systems rely on a free market, also known as a free enterprise system, to determine how resources are used. Others depend on government regulation or direct control to allocate resources. One vital responsibility of government is to make key decisions about the economy. Governments may exercise extensive control or take a more hands-off approach, but in either case, they significantly influence the economic lives of their citizens. There are resources in every economy that are considered to be the building blocks of the economy. These are called factors of production. They may include producers, distributors, consumers, labor, resources, capital, and entrepreneurs. The major four factors are considered to be land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, according to the U.S. Federal Reserve. Let's break this down. Land, known as resources, includes natural resources such as land and water to produce goods and services. Labor. This is the work people do to contribute to the production of goods and services. Capital. Money, tools, machinery used to produce goods and services. Entrepreneurs. Individuals who take risk to produce a product for profit. All economic systems must answer three basic questions. 1. What to produce? What goods and services should be created with limited resources? 2. How to produce? What resources should be used to create the goods? 3. Who gets the goods and services? What populations gets these goods and services? Economic systems are classified in two main ways. One approach looks at how goods and services are produced and distributed. This method divides economies into three types: traditional, market, and command. In a traditional economy, decisions are based on customs and long-standing practices, often relying on agriculture and raw materials. Bartering may replace the use of money. A market economy operates with little to no government interference, allowing supply and demand to determine economic outcomes. In a command economy, the government directs all economic activity and controls how resources are allocated. The second way economists classify economic systems is by linking them to the political beliefs that shape them. Using this approach, economies are identified as capitalist, socialist, or communist. There's also a blended model known as a mixed economy, which combines elements of both command and market systems. At this point, my colleague will explain the fundamentals of capitalism.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, my name is Lydia. My discussion today is the basics of capitalism. My question to you: what do you believe to be the goals of capitalism? Think on that for a minute or two. According to Columbia University and other sources, capitalism is an economic system characterized by largely private ownership of the factors of production. along with freedom of choice, individual incentives, and openness to new ideas and new entrepreneurs. These freedoms and incentives extend to workers, consumers, investors, and business owners alike. In a system of pure capitalism, the government does not interfere with the economy, meaning it does not set wages, control prices, or determine what businesses may produce or sell. The underlying belief is that society is best served when individuals are free to own businesses and make their own decisions about producing, buying, and selling goods and services. The goal of capitalism is to create what is known as a free market. In economic terms, a free market isn't a physical place like a grocery store. It's a system in which all kinds of goods and services can be freely bought and sold. This is also referred to as free enterprise. In a capitalist system, the government does not place limits on the freedom of buyers and sellers to make their own economic choices. How did this system we call capitalism begin? In the 1700s, a Scottish philosopher and economist named Adam Smith argued that governments should take a laissez-faire approach to the economy, a French term meaning let it be or leave it alone. In his influential book, The Wealth of Nations, Smith explained that the natural forces of the marketplace would function like an invisible hand, guiding people's economic choices toward the best overall outcomes. In this kind of system, competition is essential. Producers compete for the resources they need to create goods and services at the best possible price. At the same time, consumers compete with one another to purchase limited products based on their wants and needs. And in turn, those same consumers compete in the labor market, offering their skills and labor in exchange for the highest wages or salaries they can earn. I must say, pure capitalism has 5 essential pillars. 1. Private ownership and control of property and economic resources. 2. Free enterprise. 3. Competition. 4. Freedom of choice. And 5. The possibility of profits. So what does capitalism look like in the United States today? According to Richard C. Remy and other scholars, a completely pure capitalist system doesn't really exist anywhere. But the U.S. is one of the strongest examples of a capitalist economy. Just one where the government still has an important role. In the United States, we place a lot of value on individual initiative, the belief that people know what's best for themselves and should be free to make their own choices. We also strongly support the right to own private property, and we protect people's freedom to make economic decisions, like choosing where to work, what to buy, or what kind of business to start. Because the U.S. government does regulate parts of the economy, the United States isn't a purely capitalist system. Instead, it's a form of regulated or mixed capitalism. Economists and scholars describe the U.S. and many other nations as mixed economies. A mixed economy, also called a dual economy, combines elements of both a free market system and a planned economic system. In practice, this means the government regulates certain industries and provides essential public services, while private businesses operate freely in a competitive marketplace. Mexico is one example of a mixed economy. Although it has many capitalistic features, the Mexican government owns the national oil company, Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex, which was established in 1938. Let's look at how the U.S. government's role in the economy has expanded since the early 1900s. First, the federal government has become the nation's largest purchaser of goods and services. Second, it has taken on a greater role in regulating industries to protect consumers' health and safety. For instance, the Meat Inspection Act of the early 1900s was passed in response to public outrage over unsafe and unsanitary conditions in meatpacking plants. Third, the economic crisis of the Great Depression led to the creation of the Social Security system. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law on August 14, 1935. Among its provisions, it established a social insurance program that provides ongoing income to retired workers aged 65 and older. My colleague will now explain the fundamentals of socialism and communism.
Thank you, Lydia. Hello, my name is Rony. Let's continue to discuss the different types of economic systems. I will share with you socialism and communism. Before we get started, what is your understanding of socialism and communism? I will give you a moment to think on this. Socialism is an economic system in which the government plays a major role in the economy, though it does not exercise complete control. The government owns most land, key industries, and other major means of production. Under socialism, government planners decide how resources are used and how goods, services, and wages are distributed. The government also provides broad social programs such as education, healthcare, and welfare. The central goal of socialism is to achieve a more equal distribution of wealth. Many scholars say the term socialism became popular in the 1830s when French thinker Pierre Leroux used it to describe a more equal, community-focused alternative to rising capitalist individualism. Socialism developed in the early 1800s during the Industrial Revolution in Europe and the United States. Industrialization created modern economies and made industrial leaders very wealthy, but it also caused severe hardship for workers, including children. Many workers lived in poverty and worked long hours, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Before labor unions existed, they had almost no power to negotiate better pay or safer working conditions. Supporters of socialism argued that no one should suffer or go hungry while a small group of leaders made huge profits. They felt capitalism was unfair and believed the government should have more control over the economy to distribute goods and wealth more equally. Some claimed that wealthy capitalists would never share their money, so only a violent revolution could create change. Others believed that organizing workers could bring about peaceful reform. Opponents of socialism said it discouraged personal initiative. They also warned that socialism could lead to higher taxes, bigger government, and even dictatorship. Overall, socialism is a political and economic idea that supports collective or government ownership of major industries and resources instead of private ownership. I've explained the basics of socialism. So now let's define democratic socialism. Based on my research, democratic socialism refers to socialists who support democracy but want the government to play a larger role in distributing wealth. In this system, people keep their basic democratic rights. But democratic socialism aims to reduce the inequalities of capitalism by placing the production and distribution of goods under public or worker control, while still protecting democratic institutions. Supporters argue that political democracy is incomplete without economic democracy, meaning people should have a real voice in their workplaces and in the economy as a whole. Democratic socialists reject authoritarianism. Their goal is simply greater economic equality for everyone. I will now touch upon communism. The question I pose to you, what is a command economy and how does it work? Take a few moments and think on this. In many communist countries, a command economy is a system where the government, not the free market, makes the big economic decisions. The government chooses what goods will be produced, how much will be made, and what the prices will be. It also controls wages, income levels, and how money and resources are used. In this kind of system, the government or the community owns the land and the factories, not private individuals. Because all major decisions come from one central authority, a command economy is also called a centrally planned economy. In addition to controlling the economy, the government also controls major forms of communication, such as newspapers, magazines, television, radio, the internet, and even the movie industry. Let's discuss the basic theory of communism. Take a look at Karl Marx, a German thinker from the mid-1800s. He believed and wrote that industrialization created unfair divisions between two groups of people, the bourgeoisie, or the capitalist or owners, and the proletariat, or the workers. He argued that wealth should be shared so people receive what they need, not based on how much money they have. Marx imagined a future where there would be only one class, the working class, and all property would be owned together instead of by individuals. In this ideal version of communism, there would eventually be no need for a government because everyone would work cooperatively for the common good. However, when countries tried to put communism into practice, many governments became authoritarian meaning they controlled people's lives and punished those who disagreed with them. This led to serious human rights problems and economic challenges, as seen in historical examples like the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba. In a nutshell, communism is an economic system by which the central government directs all major economic decisions. While communism theoretically promises equality and freedom, the implementation of its doctrines has often led to the opposite outcome, resulting in economic inefficiencies and societal discontent. During the Cold War, several countries, like the Soviet Union, East Germany, and many nations in Eastern Europe, were communist states. After major events such as the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, the number of communist countries dropped quickly. Today, only a few communist states remain. According to World Population Review, the countries that are still communist today are China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam. For example, North Korea is one government that maintains tight control over the economy and gives individuals almost no economic freedom. I will now turn you over to my colleague who will wrap up our presentation.
Thank you, Rony. In this presentation, we explained that an economic system is the way individuals and nations decide how to use limited resources to meet their needs and wants. These systems are commonly grouped into three main types: capitalism, socialism, and communism. Each system offers a different way of organizing the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services based on who owns resources and how decisions are made. In capitalism, the means of production are privately owned, and prices, production, and distribution are mostly determined by the free market. In socialism, the means of production are collectively or publicly owned, usually managed by the government. The goal is to distribute wealth and resources more equally by providing public services and social support. In communism, all property and production are owned by the central government. A central authority plans what is produced and how goods are distributed, aiming to eliminate social classes and the need for money. In reality, most modern countries do not follow just one system. Instead, they operate as mixed economies, blending free market capitalism with government regulation and social programs. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
Are there any questions? Great idea.
Yes, let's do it.
That was a great student idea. I hope you gleaned something from the student's presentation. Let's move to our knowledge check. Pause the video and attempt to answer the questions at your leisure. Rewind the video for the answers. Good luck. Thank you for watching and listening to this learning video. Please check out the references that follows. Have a nice day and hope to see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.